Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new edition of the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Mara Fatemi, joined by my good friend and co-host Jake Daly here today. How are you doing today, Jake?
Too bad, man, Rob. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well, man. We got a packed show lined up for you guys today. Top it up, going on right off the top, we're going to talk about the NBA Finals. Big game two happening tonight in OKC. OKC obviously dropping game one in dramatic fashion. Tyrese Halliburton with a crazy shot. We're going to discuss, can the Thunder bounce back, or will the Pacers take control of this series before it switches over to Indiana? We'll also talk a little bit about the NCAA scholarships program. We saw that their house settlement just got approved a couple days ago. We'll get into all of that and discuss what the scholarship and some roster limits issues, some logistic stuff regarding the NCAA. We also going to talk a little bit about the NFL, NFC North specifically, with how crazy that division is. There was a lot to discuss there, so be sure to stick around for that segment. Talk a little bit about the Steelers. Talk some WWE, some Money in the Bank reactions. Money in the Bank happening last night. We saw Seth Rollins winning that briefcase, and honestly, what to expect next with a big Monday Night Raw tomorrow. And then we'll get into some hockey, some more NCAA, and then obviously some UFC 316 to close out the show. But before we move any further, I'd like to remind you guys to please like and follow the show for more GSMC Sports Network content. Also, we get a number of questions from viewers that come in during the show, so to ensure that your question gets read on air, ask that you use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. This puts your question at the top of the list so I see it, and it also really helps out the show. Again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net for all your questions and comments. But let's get right into it here, Jake, because we have a packed show lined up, and we got to get into the NBA Finals. About to kick off in about 30 minutes' time in OKC. There is a little bit of a tornado warning out there, Jake. You think it's going to be a little windy? You think OKC has it in the bag right now?
I don't know, man. I mean, weather can always play a factor, especially in an indoor sport, right? But no, jokes aside, this is going to be an exciting matchup. I'm kind of curious to see what adjustments Mark Daigneault is going to make after game one, in which they kind of let it slip through their fingers. Fingers, pretty much. Honestly, they had that game in the bag, forcing Indiana to have almost 20 turnovers in the first half, 25 overall. Um, they really played a phenomenal basketball game and still lost. So how is Martin Dad now going to adjust? One thing I'm looking for is Isaiah Hartenstein. Is he going to start tonight? How much is he going to play? Are they going to kind of go with that Case and Wallace group again? I think that's going to be one interesting adjustment. But this is a Thunder team that when they get rebounds, they are dominant. If they out rebounds the other team, they almost never lose. 37-3 in the regular seasons when grabbing as many or more rebounds than their opponents. And 4-4 in the spring when they don't grab as many rebounds as their opponents. So this is a key stat for Oklahoma City. And I think that the boards are going to be a big issue tonight. Any thoughts?
100%. Rebounds are so crucial, especially come playoff time. Giving offenses extra opportunities to get up shots, giving them opportunities to get to the free throw line. This is so crucial for just switching the sides of momentum. Rebounds play a crucial factor in that. But there are two things I'm looking forward to for the Thunder to try and fix if they can. I don't think they're gonna fix the first one that I'm gonna say, and that's gonna be the turnovers. And points off turnovers in game one. The Pacers had about 24 turnovers in game one. Thunder only scoring 11 points off of those 24 turnovers. Something that was incredibly lacking, something that you need to clean up if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder. When a team is turning the ball over at that level, you have to take better advantage of that basketball. You have to take advantage of it. Whether it's the Pacers getting back in transition, whatever it is, you have to figure out ways to score the basketball in this situation because those are crucial moments. And those are moments that the Pacers are giving to you on a silver platter. You have to be able to take control of those. Another player that I'm looking forward to kind of clearing it up, you brought up Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm going with the other double big over there. I'm going with Chet Holmgren. Only having 6 points, shot 2 for 9. He did have 6 rebounds in game one, but I'm looking at him to step up a little bit because he is a key member of that big three that's kind of formulating over there in OKC. If the Thunder want to play at their best level, Chet Holmgren needs to be a big part of that formula. And yeah, if it's, I think Shea's going to continue to play at a high level like he did in game one, but it's going to be the role players in general that need to step up.
So I got a question for you. So obviously, right, this is Halliburton versus Shea. That's the big storyline. But is it crazy to think that the front court, the power forward center duo, that's going to determine the winner of this series? Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren versus Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner. I think honestly, whoever plays better out of those two duos might end up being kind of the X factor here. I don't know if you kind of think the same way, but certainly seems like there's at least a conversation and an argument for that.
Absolutely, 100%. I think a big thing that I was looking forward to in this series was how the Thunder were going to be able to handle the double big of Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner because of how differently they play compared to anybody else in the Western Conference. Of course, you have Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert. You had to deal with Zach Edey and Jaren Jackson Jr. with the Memphis Grizzlies. You still had to deal with Aaron Gordon and Jokic, but I mean, this is just such a different lineup with the Pacers. They play with so much pace, so much space. They're able to push the ball, push the tempo, and in a way they force the Thunder to they beat the Thunder at their own game in a way. That's what they did in game 1, being able to stick with them, especially down the stretch in clutch moments. I think Pascal Siakam was the Eastern Conference Finals MVP for a reason. He won it over Tyrese Halliburton. Some people may call that a little bit of a snub, but if you watch that, Pascal Siakam was crucial in throughout the Eastern Conference playoffs when they ran through all three series, including especially the MVP, especially the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think, yeah, Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam play big roles in this series. When you're looking at like,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you,
Go ahead.
who do you think needs to step up in this moment more, Tyrese Halliburton or Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
Uh, Honestly, I don't know if it's either of them. I think honestly the pressure's on both of them right now. I think if you're picking one guy, it's probably going to be SGA, right? Halliburton, there's a little more veteran kind of leadership around him, surrounding that team with kind of guys like Pascal Siakam, Miles Turner, TJ McConnell's, some of those kind of veteran types that, can steady a team. There's not a whole lot of that on Oklahoma City. Shea Gilgeous Alexander is almost kind of the elder statesman over there, even though he's only, mid 20s. But for that team, for how young that roster is, he kind of is that role. He is kind of that guy. And when things are going to kind of go tough, they're going to look up to SGA and be like, hey, dude, get us out of this. And I think that's where there might be a little more pressure on Shea to kind of deliver in this finals than maybe there is on Tyrese Halliburton right now.
For sure. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander's been such a heart and soul for that team, carrying that offense throughout these playoffs. But another player that we kind of brought up when we were recapping this series on Friday, I believe. I'm trying to think back. Yeah, Friday. We talked about Jalen Williams. Jalen Williams having a little bit of a struggle game, and he's been struggling throughout these Western Conference playoffs. Is he a sneaky X factor in not only in tonight's game, but the games moving forward throughout these finals?
Oh, he's completely an X factor. I mean, this is a guy that pretty much is Oklahoma City's number two guy. I think he is that over Chet Holmgren personally. Just what he brings to the table on both sides of the ball. This is a guy that when he's on, can go for 25, 8, and 7 on any given night and give you really great production on the defensive end of the ball too. Um, I think though he kind of struggled in game 1. We saw still had 17 points, but not super efficient. Kind of didn't get him the way we normally are used to seeing Jalen Williams operate. If he can kind of get back to his normal self, if he can, be 22, 23 points per game, this guy can win this series for Oklahoma City. I think he's a huge X factor, both in terms of kind of what he can do offensively as well as what he brings to the other side of the ball too. just in kind of his defensive production. So Jalen Williams, I think for sure, is definitely an X factor in this game 2 and in the rest of the series going forward.
For sure. Yeah. You brought up Mark Dagnall as well. And when you're first talking about this, when we're talking about game 2 tonight, do you think that chess match between Rick Carlisle and Mark Dagnall is a really, really it's an underrated storyline in this series?
I think yes and no. We got to give Mark Dagnall credit, though. This is a phenomenal, young, great offensive mind, and just a guy that really is a phenomenal head coach for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Taking them this far when they're so young already, I don't think any of us really predicted them to kind of be this strong as a unit this early kind of into the tenure. We always saw that, hey, Oklahoma City's got like 40 draft picks, so maybe in a couple of years down the road. But I don't think anybody said, yeah, in 2025, we're going to see the Oklahoma City Thunder in the NBA Finals with some of these guys. So this is a great head coach, but yeah, I think it is a little underrated. You have Rick Carlisle, experienced head coach, 6th NBA final, versus a second-year head coach. There's going to be a difference there, an experience in tactics and just kind of how you manage the game. So I think, yeah, it kind of is an underrated storyline, and it's something that we might see show up later on down the road.
For sure. Mark Dagnall in really a tough spot tonight, or in this series, going up against such an experienced head coach in Rick Carlisle. We obviously remember that 2010 run with the Dallas Mavericks when they won the championship against LeBron James back in 2011. If Rick Carlisle can get it done again, that would be insane, and that was a big part of this playoff preview. When we were looking at this on paper at first before game 1, that was a big part of this series. But for going straight into picks, I think from where we're looking at game 2, I think this has to be a little bit of a must-win game for OKC. Going back to Indiana is a really tough place to play. We have seen Indiana struggle a little bit more at home, but I mean, it's the NBA Finals we're talking about here. This is the first time for both of these teams. You can't really look at history at this point. The history goes out the window. You have to look at present. You have to look at the current times. I'm rolling with OKC to win this game, but if they don't, they're in a world of trouble before game 3. What do you think?
I mean, I think it's Oklahoma City too. It's just there's too much on the line right now. You're at home. You have pretty much you let game 1 slip away. You need to win this game. You can't go down 2-0. I think there's too much on the line. They're going to be able to lock in, kind of make some adjustments, and be able to win this game too.
For sure. We're both in alignment there. We'll leave it at that. Tip off shortly in about 12 minutes now. I think tips off at 8:30. Yeah. We'll catch up with this. We'll give a little bit of an update later on in the show. But switching gears over to the NCAA. We're going to take a short break, but we're going to switch gears over to the NCAA for our next segment. Talk a little bit about the House settlement that went down late last week, and we'll discuss everything that you got to know about the logistics with the scholarships and some roster limits that we didn't get to talk about yesterday. So you're watching the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Marif Fatemi, joined today by my great friend and co-host, Jake Daly. In our next segment here, we're going to switch gears from the NBA over to the NCAA. Some college football news, well, college athletics in general. But so we saw the House settlement get approved on Friday night, late Friday night, and we got to get right into that news about the scholarships and some roster limits, some logistic things that are coming from this new settlement deal that took place in the NCAA. But before I move any further, I'd like to remind you guys to please like and follow the show for more GSMC Sports Network content. Also, we get a number of questions from viewers that come in during the show, so to ensure that your question gets read on air, ask that you use the tips and donations link at gsmcpodcast.net. This puts your question at the top of the list so I see it, and it also really helps out the show. Again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net for all your questions and comments. But let's get right back into it here because we got to get into this NCAA news. We saw the House settlement get signed and agreed to late Friday night. We brought it as breaking news on this show. Me and Jake were sitting here on this panel around 9:30 on Friday night talking about this. Immediately we thought what is going to change with athletics with the removal of NIL money. But now we got to kind of get into the scholarship side of things because there is the NIL with players getting paid. But as terms with when we're looking at scholarships with players trying to get into college, trying to pay for college, what are you trying to think? What are your initial thoughts of it, Jake, when you're thinking about this new scholarship issue?
Yeah, so this is interesting. So essentially, what's kind of happened with the House settlement is they've introduced new roster limits for pretty much every NCAA sport across the board. And there is kind of a caveat with this. So now schools can offer full scholarships up to the roster limit. So there's no longer an amount of full scholarships than partial scholarships. Schools can now offer full scholarships up to that roster limit. However, the roster limits for a lot of these sports are smaller than the average roster sizes. You look at football, for example. Football is now going to have a hard roster limit of 105 student athletes per football team, per university's football team. If you look at some of these programs, Nebraska, they've had 180 football players on their roster. Texas A&M, 143. Under these new limits, those programs would have to cut 80, 40 guys to get under these limits. So it could cost, some research has suggested, it could cost over 13,000 athletes their scholarships and their positions in college athletics at one point. This was a big issue too for Judge Claudia Wilken. That was kind of one of the big hang-ups in the House settlement. And she kind of said, hey, if you don't do something to kind of fix this issue, this settlement is not going to pass. So kind of what they did is they've put in place almost a grandfathering law where it's voluntary and any athlete, they can kind of say that they lost their spot because of this roster size limit. Their spot will be able to remain. There will kind of be an eligibility waiver throughout the remaining eligibility that student athlete has. So they're going to kind of grandfather it in, but eventually these roster limits are going to be in place for every sport across college athletics. What do you think about that many student athletes potentially kind of losing out on opportunities to compete in college sports throughout, the rest of this time period, I guess, this crazy era?
It's so crazy, Jake, because when I think back, I used to play a little bit of high school sports. I just recently graduated about 4 years ago. When I'm thinking about I used to run cross country and track. And when I thought about even trying to do college sports, the one thing that came into mind was how competitive it was, even at the D1, whatever division level it was. Now you're telling me 13,000 of those students might not even have a chance. It makes the competitiveness even crazier. And not only is this an issue for universities being able to be competitive in sports and have backup guys increase their roster spots, but it's making it more difficult for athletes coming out of high school to possibly want to join a college team. So, and this is across all sports. This isn't just football. This isn't just basketball. This is across every single sport. The one thing that I'm still kind of confused a little bit about, I'm hoping you can let me know about. Maybe I'm a little bit far off, but how much is the cap limit on the money that's going to be available for per university? How much of an issue is that going to be for these student athletes in terms of how much they're going to be getting paid? And is there going to be a difference between how much they were getting paid from NIL versus this new third party issue, NCAA agreement that they have?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. So, kind of how the salary cap's going to be set up. I think we're honestly going to see a lot of, kind of football, basketball players. I think they're going to have to take pay cuts. Um, just because it sounds like the school, they're not going to be able to pay every single player $750,000, right? If you only have 20.5 million to work with, and that's for the schools that even have $20.5 million to put towards athletics. You're not going to be able to pay everybody that much money. And then with kind of this new third party NIL Go organization that's going to be run by Deloitte, it sounds like they would have denied a lot of these third party NIL deals that we've seen over the past couple of years. So going forward, if you're not seeing some of those kind of third party deals, and if schools aren't going to be able to pay these athletes, 100,000, 750, 500K per player, I think we're going to see some of these guys start having to take less money. But it's going to be a little more uniform, I think, to where it won't be open season per se. In a sense, it's going to be interesting, though.
Yeah, and
I
you're
don't
just
know if that makes sense, kind of what I was saying.
no, it does. It 100% does. And while you were talking about that, something just trickled into my brain, a little bit of a thought. Um, do you think some players will start moving? Do you think we're going to see a little bit of an uptick of players coming out of high school just going straight into professional sports with this new issue of with this new issue of scholarships and just money not being players not getting paid? Do you think you'll see a little bit of an uptick in that?
I mean, I guess we could see it maybe in some sports such as, baseball, where you've seen kind of a lot of high school guys come out already. Um, it's certainly going to be interesting, though, when you see maybe some of those prospects that are kind of on the cusp of going to college versus potentially going pro, what that decision is going to be. I don't know if there's going to be a huge impact on kind of players going professional. Basketball kind of seems honestly like the NIL era has pushed kids more towards staying in school. When you look at some of these 3-4 year guys that have kind of stayed at Houston, at the LJ Criers of the world, the guys that had been bouncing around. Caleb Love has been playing college basketball now for 7 years. It feels like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like these guys are kind of starting to stay in school a little more. So I wonder if that's going to be a thing. At least this year for football, some of these kids are going to be paid a lot more this season than they will in their rookie year in the NFL. It's just how it's going to be. So I don't know. Honestly, it could kind of go either way. I just don't know if that's a huge factor, I guess, right now. But it's certainly kind of an interesting conversation and talking point to kind of think about.
For sure. And kind of going off of that point, we were talking about this yesterday. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear me while I was talking about it, but you were asking me the questions about, sorry about those technical difficulties, but you were talking to me about, you were asking me about the possibility that some schools, like you brought up St. John's University, how good they were in basketball. Could some of these schools that are so good in specific sports just throw the towel in for example, football, like a smaller school that's great at basketball, but a little bit of a smaller school in football? Could they throw the towel in for football and dial in some of that money towards that basketball program to just, for example, put 20 million into basketball and then 15 or 10 million into football? Do you see something like that possibly happening with this new deal?
Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. But then also you got to think about too, what if an Alabama or a Georgia goes, we don't care about any of our Olympic sports. We don't care about anything else. We're going to cut everything besides football, besides basketball, besides baseball, and then softball, women's basketball. It's very, like, I could see that being almost a reality too, where you start seeing some of the other schools kind of go the other way and cut, the rifle team, the golf team, swimming, like tennis, like some of these varsity sports that are NCAA sports that are under their umbrella, but maybe they don't really care that much about them in terms of financially, in terms of the brand that they drive, the stuff that they bring in. So could you kind of see maybe like an Alabama go ahead and just cut soccer or cut golf or track and field? I think that's also very much a possibility here of some of these sports just completely shutting their programs down at certain universities.
100%. And honestly, they're either going to cut those sports out or they're going to just say, sorry, we're out of money. Just play it for free. That's what they're going to do to some of these athletes. And it's sad. It's unfortunate. It's not fair. But this is the new rules of this new NCAA settlement and this House settlement. If this is the right way to go, this might just be a trial and error year. Maybe they just get rid of it after a year. Is there a contract on it, Jake, or is it just a year-by-year thing that they have?
This is, I believe it runs for about 10 years right now.
Okay.
And so the 20.5 million, like that's going to increase on a yearly kind of incremental based system. I believe it's a 10-year agreement. I got to look though at the actual length of the settlement, but
yeah. We'll look at it further. And this is probably, we're going to be talking about this a bunch as the college football season just quickly approaches. We're just about 2 months away from it. So we have a lot more to discuss with this as the football season continues to rapidly approach. But when we're looking at the NCAA as a whole, it's unfortunate to see this. Some of these players are going to miss out. Some of these colleges are going to cut some of their roster spots. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. We can talk about this quickly. Do you have any predictions on who's going to win the college football playoff this year? Or who's your favorite to win out of the college football group? We'll talk about this further, but just off quick glance, we have a little bit of time.
Early prediction. I think a team in orange is going to win it. Either a Texas Longhorns or Clemson Tigers. I think those are two of my top ones right now, but it's kind of crazy. And if Penn State can finally maybe beat Ohio State, then, but they have a really talented team this year. It's just, that's the year, that's the question every single year. Can Penn State finally beat Ohio State?
Feels like
we'll see. I don't know.
That rivalry still to this day reminds me, it just feels just like the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. Is Ohio State ever going to beat Michigan? Is Penn State ever going to beat Ohio State?
Oh, I don't know, man. That's those are strong words over there.
We might ruffle some feathers over there, but we'll get into this a little bit further throughout the show. We'll bounce back over to the NCAA later on in the show, so stick around for that. But I'm going to take a short break. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears back over to the NBA and discuss some more basketball. So you're watching the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Meir Fatemi, joined today by my good friend and co-host, Jake Daly. Jumping into our next segment here, we talked a little bit about the NCAA in our last segment. We talked about the collegiate level. Let's jump over to the professional level of things, over to the NFL, and specifically over to the wild, wild north of the NFC North. How crazy that division is right now. I know it's a wild, wild west, but let's bring it. Let's give the North some credit here. How crazy this division is. We're looking at Green Bay, the Detroit Lions, who just won, which was one of the best teams in the NFC, missing a lot of pieces this year. The Chicago Bears have improved a lot. The Minnesota Vikings bring in J.J. McCarthy and having his first freshman year in the NFL. How is this all going to shake out, Jake? And give me your initial thoughts when you think NFC North, when you think about how crazy it is. Who do you see coming up atop of this division?
First thing is, honestly, it's very possible that all four of these teams could be playoff contenders. You look at the Packers, really solid roster across the board. Jordan Love finally drafted a wide receiver in the first round for the first time in over 20 seasons, taking Matthew Golden. You have Minnesota, had a really strong season last year. Was it luck? Was it just kind of they're a good team? I don't know, but you still have kind of the majority, the core of that group coming back. You have Jay Jettas. You have a healthy, pretty much rookie J.J. McCarthy after he had that torn ACL, sat all of last season. You have one of the hottest young offensive-minded head coaches in the NFL, and Kevin O'Connell, who kind of seems every single year to just grow his reputation as a head coach. That's a really, really solid team in Minnesota. And then you got the big question mark in the Chicago Bears. How are they going to look under Ben Johnson, first-year head coach, but being poached from their division rival, the Detroit Lions, taking him and pairing him with Caleb Williams? You give them a brand new head coach. You give him Colston Loveland at tight end. You still have Rome Dunze. You still have DJ Moore there. You have a vastly improved offensive line as well. Bring in Joe Tooney, bring in a couple other guys. This is going to be really intriguing. And one question, though, I kind of think is, who do you actually think is the best quarterback in this division? Because there's Jared Goff guys, there's Caleb Williams, there's Jordan Love, and then JJ. But, those other three guys, I mean, those are all pretty solid quarterbacks. I don't know. Who do you think? Who would you have as the top?
I think it's in my brain. It's a no-brainer with Jordan Love. I think he's the best guy on paper before season outlook. I think you are underrating J.J. McCarthy a little bit. I know he had some dark days in Michigan, but he is a great young quarterback. We didn't give him enough of a chance. We gave him no chance in his first season last year, getting hurt in the middle of OTAs in minicamp, getting no chance to get out there on the field, even in the preseason. So we got to give him a chance before we run him into the ground. It's also crazy how Ben Johnson goes from an assistant coach, the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, and goes in the middle of the division to the Chicago Bears as a head coach. How that battle is going to be going between Matt Campbell and Ben Johnson in the regular season, or possibly in the playoffs as well, is going to be really interesting. I think all the coaches in this division are superb, and I think that's going to be a big part of this entire thing. But my initial thoughts, I think I have to give this division to Green Bay. As much as I love Detroit, I think they can piece this thing together. I think Jared Goff is still a good quarterback. I think Amon-Ra is still probably the best. Let me change that. My brain just forgot Jettas as a person. He's not the best wide receiver in the world, in the division. Justin Jefferson still owns that title. But Amon-Ra
Put
still
some
one of
flowers on Amon-Ra St. Brown's name, though. That dude, he can play some ball. That's a stud right there. So
he is
put some
so good.
respect on his name, though.
He is so good, man. Amon-Ra, when he gets going down the field, you better have Tyreek Hill as your cornerback, or else you're not catching him. He is sprinting full speed ahead like lightning down the field. But
I'm
I,
really curious about JJ McCarthy. I'm just really intrigued. Because honestly, frankly, I was never that impressed with him as a college quarterback. He didn't push the needle for me. I mean, that team around him at Michigan was so strong. Defense, this is one of the best teams we've seen built probably in the 21st century, just across the board. And then the running game that he had, still having Colston Loveland there too. I just think JJ never really needed to do anything. He only threw over 25 passes per game, like 4 or 5 times in his career at Michigan. Something that was kind of crazy actually when you looked at it. But is this going to be a guy? I think that's one of the big question marks of this division is JJ McCarthy. What's going to happen there? This kid that already was going to have questions as a young prospect, but then you add in that ACL tear from last season. What's he going to look like? And also, you think about what Sam Darnold did with Minnesota last year. If JJ doesn't live up to kind of what Sam Darnold did, how are Minnesota fans going to react that they let Sam Darnold leave this offseason and sign with the Seattle Seahawks? I think that's another big kind of interesting little tidbit there to think about.
for sure. And the one thing that comes to mind when I think about the Minnesota Vikings, a big concern that I have as well with JJ McCarthy, is that offensive line in Minnesota. We saw Sam Darnold be under duress all playoffs long. We saw in the regular season they did have some success when Sam Darnold was a little bit of a game manager, but especially in the playoffs when that pressure started to get dialed up, Sam Darnold had had a little bit of a turnover problem, especially in that playoff game. But when I think that's going to be a big issue, but with the running game that the Minnesota Vikings have with Aaron Jones, with the weapons that the JJ combo that they have going with him and Justin Jefferson, they have a great young core over there. I think they have a great chance of winning this division. I think JJ McCarthy's gonna have to he's going to need to step up at some times. And he did in Michigan, but he also had a great running game with him there, and a great offensive line, and a great defense, and a great coach. So that Michigan team was built for a good game manager to figure out his stuff. Is that going to work? Is that going to translate into the NFL? That's a great question mark, and that is a big question mark because we haven't seen any sign of him in the purple uniforms yet. But I think I got to still give this division to the Green Bay Packers. They're just so strong on all sides of the ball. They still have Jair Alexander on the back line. They still have Jordan Love, who's playing out of his mind over there. But a little bit of a wild card team, and I know you brought him up. The Bears may not be just the Bears anymore. They might be one of those great teams in the NFC North. Let's hear what your thoughts are. Let's hear your thoughts on that, Jake. I know they're one of your fan favorites, so I'll let you take this one away.
Is Chicago actually going to find a quarterback? We'll see. They're just one of those cursed franchises, it feels like Cleveland, honestly kind of like Detroit until Jared Goff. You're not going to get good quarterback play out of these places. It just kind of seems like. But if anybody's got a chance to change that narrative, it's Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson. You look at Caleb Williams, #1 overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner at USC, a guy that set records as a freshman at Oklahoma, a guy that was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school from Gonzaga College in Washington, D.C., playing against some of the top talent in the nation there. So this is a guy that's been doing this since he was basically 15 years old, used to the spotlight, used to the pressure, and has all the talent in the world to kind of be one of the elite quarterbacks of the NFL. Freak athlete, a dual threat guy, has a super live wire arm. And if Ben Johnson, who in his own right is one of the brightest play callers in the NFL, if you look at some of the plays he drew up last year, pretty much every single week, there was another crazy out of this world play design that you're like, how did he come up with this? So if you can kind of pair that with Caleb Williams, you have a really solid passing attack there in DJ Moore, in Rome Odunze, and they drafted one of my favorite wide receivers in Missouri wide receiver Luther Burden III. You give those three guys to Caleb Williams, that's a really dynamic offense, and you kind of retool that offensive line. This is going to be one of the big question marks. How quickly do they mesh? Can kind of Ben Johnson unlock Caleb Williams' potential? And can they kind of change the narrative in Chicago once and for all?
You bring up Luther Burden. Luther Burden is one of my favorite draft picks in this young core. He was probably I wanted the Seattle Seahawks to draft him so bad. I know they drafted Jalen Milroe and he's looked like a stud over there, but Luther Burden is such a good wide receiver, I think. I saw him play in person. He's just he's one of my favorite young wide receivers in this class.
He was one of my favorite prospects this year by far. Kind of had a rough 2024 season, but when you look at his 23 tape, unreal, dude, just unreal player. No, so I completely agree, and I think you pair him with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze.
Keenan Allen. I'd throw Keenan Allen in that mix. Like I know Luther Burden had some injuries in 2024. That's why it derailed his last season with Missouri. But you bring up his 2023 highlight tape. He's speedy. He's dynamic. His hands are incredible. His footwork is incredible. He's just one of those great. In a way, this is a little bit of a crazy comparison, but he has a little bit of that Jamar Chase in him with the speed, his hands, his footwork, the way he's able to run the field. And he's going to be able to learn. He's going to be a third man option behind DJ Moore, behind Keenan Allen, behind Rome Odunze. He has the growth. He has a great young core over there, and he has a bunch of guys that he can mentor from. He has room to grow. He has time that he can use to his advantage here. And I think the Chicago Bears have a bright, bright future ahead of them. Caleb Williams is going to have a fantastic season in my estimation.
But we'll see. We'll see. You know, if he can break the curse, it's. I swear, it's almost like a curse. But Caleb Williams has a talent.
The Chicago curse. The Chicago curse. Let's see what they can do with this young town over there. I don't think who do you have as your top? Who do you think is going to win this division? Who, in your estimation, preseason?
Right now I think it's still the Detroit Lions. They did lose a lot, but I just have faith in Jared Goff, in Amon-Ra St. Brown, and kind of some of those other guys over there, Jack Campbell types, the Brian Branches of the world. I think this is just too solid of a team, too well coached under Dan Campbell. I think they're still the early favorites right now.
For sure. And bringing back Aiden Hutchinson is such a big piece to that team. The Detroit Lions will be back. The Vikings will be back. The Packers are still around, and the Bears are up and coming. They're that wild card team that can take this division by storm this year. But I'm going to leave it off on that note. I'm going to take a short break. Coming up next, we're going to switch gears back over to the NBA and talk some more Game 2. You're watching the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Merav Temi, joined today by my good friend and co-host, Jake Daly. In our next segment here, we're going to keep it in the NFL and switch gears over to the AFC with a team that made some news a couple days ago, finally signing Aaron Rodgers, giving Aaron Rodgers a home for his 22nd year. This is his 22nd year in the NFL now. He's going to Pittsburgh in the black and gold first. And how do you see? Honestly, this is such a weird spot for Aaron Rodgers, I think. The offense, they just trade away George Pickens. They still have Freiermuth. They still have a great head coach in Mike Tomlin. They bring in DK Metcalf. What are your thoughts on this offense, Jake? And how do you see Aaron Rodgers being able to thrive in this new black and gold uniform?
Well, my first thoughts are Aaron Rodgers, here we go again. Jeremy Fowler reported the other day on SportsCenter that Aaron Rodgers has reportedly already talked to head coach Mike Tomlin and offensive coordinator Arthur Smith in them reconfiguring the offense so that Aaron Rodgers knows some of their line calls and can do some of his pre-snap check at the line kind of stuff. They're going to add some of his terminology in there. I don't know what else they're going to change, but Aaron Rodgers, here we go again. Kind of taking over an offense. And yeah, I mean, when you think about what they did in bringing in DK Metcalf, kind of retooling this offensive line, this is frankly not an exciting offense to me. Does 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers excite you as a quarterback option, Rob? Would that?
No, but it's better than Will Howard right now.
Well, that is a very fair point. It was slim pickings besides Aaron Rodgers. The other thing, though, too, if you're Aaron Rodgers, if you're Pittsburgh, you knew this was happening for like 3 months. Like, this has been talked about since pretty much March. Since the start of the league year, we've essentially known that Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh is a done deal. So why does it take until almost OTAs to bring him into the Steelers? And now you're saying that you're going to reconfigure your offense for him in June? In June. It's June 8th today. The season is in 2 months. And you're going to start reconfiguring your offense right now for a 42-year-old quarterback who has not been a good quarterback since 2020, frankly. 2019, since that last MVP season with the Packers. He hasn't been the same guy. I just think it's baffling that you're going to reconfigure your whole offense pretty much for Aaron Rodgers. Like, does that seem like a good move to you? I don't know.
No.
For me, yeah.
You hit the nail on the head.
I don't know.
You're really hitting. Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. I can't say it any better. Aaron Rodgers reconfiguring your offense. This move already feels like it's just a Band-Aid move. It feels like it's just a move you're going to roll with a year for 1 year. Then you're going to go into next year and draft a quarterback in the draft, and you're going to be fine. You have Will Howard in the background. This literally just feels like a Band-Aid move. You're reconfiguring your offense. You have guys like Le'Veon Bell who hasn't touched the NFL field in 5 years talking about coming back to the Steelers. You have a guy in Antonio Brown, which is in his own, we're not even going to talk about that too much, who's talking about possibly coming back to join the Steelers, have a little bit of a reunion. It just feels like the Steelers didn't even do this when Ben Roethlisberger was still there. When Ben Roethlisberger was still there in his final year. So this is a 42-year-old guy coming off an Achilles injury, had a pretty, I wouldn't even call it mediocre, maybe below average year with the Jets last year. Had an Achilles injury the year before, had one drive 3 years ago where he looked Packers-esque and then tears his Achilles. This is a guy that we can't expect a lot out of. It's just unfortunate, but it's the truth. And the Steelers bring him in, wait until June, like you said, when there were already reports that this was 95% done in April. They wait 2 months for it to be finalized on Aaron Rodgers' clock, on his time. Bring out the red carpet for him. It just feels like this is just a forced. It feels like you're on Aaron Rodgers' time. And when you're doing that, you can't build a team just around the quarterback, especially in football. This isn't even the NBA of the old days. I can't even say the NBA of today because that doesn't even work anymore. You see, so you really have to, you can't think about this like an individual sport anymore. And as valuable as Aaron Rodgers can be sometimes, as good as the Steelers might look on paper with their roster, they have other holes. You could have given that $20 million to TJ Watt, who still doesn't have a contract. So it just feels like there's other holes on the Steelers offense or as a team in general that need to be filled. What are your thoughts on that, Jake?
Something to think about too, right? So you draft a quarterback in the 6th round. So you know you're going to take a quarterback at some point in the draft. Okay? There's point 1. Point 2, you're reconfiguring your offense right now. You're going to kind of configure your locker room to bring in Aaron Rodgers. Okay, here's my point. If you're going to reconfigure your locker room for a quarterback, if you're going to draft a quarterback already, why not take a chance on Shedeur Sanders during the draft in the 4th round when they could have taken him? You go, okay, this is a guy that can potentially start for us. And if we're going to retool and configure for one guy, why not make it a 22-year-old who could be our future face of the franchise type quarterback over Aaron Rodgers? Like, and I'm sure that's not the thinking of the Steelers front office at that point in time, but it's still kind of the same argument, right? Why not just take a chance on one of the younger guys, especially when you got to day 3 and you start seeing Shedeur fall and fall and fall and fall. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me just logically of why Pittsburgh would make this move, I think. I think there's an upside, but really, what do you see the ceiling of this Steelers team being, honestly?
I think you know what I'm gonna say too. Make it to a wild card spot and then get bounced out. Like, let's be honest here. Let's be real. This is the AFC that we're talking about here. How good they are. We're talking about already a packed division in the AFC North. You have the Bengals, you have the Ravens, you have the Browns, who are kind of still up and coming. Sorry, I know you're a Cleveland guy. You have the AFC East with the Dolphins. You have the Bills still there. You have the AFC West with how loaded they look, with the Broncos that look better. The Chargers look better. The Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes are still around.
Raiders even.
The Raiders, who are up and coming with Pete Carroll. You have a bunch of guys, you have a bunch of teams all around the AFC that look like they're ready to go. And I'm going to leave it on this because you made a great point about Shedeur Sanders. Why didn't the Steelers do the same thing the Browns did? They bring in 3 quarterbacks. They have a great QB competition in the preseason. You give your offensive guys, you give your quarterback some adversity to deal with early on. So by the time they hit that field in week 1, they'll have a little bit of some experience before they hit the field. Of course, the Browns still have Joe Flacco. They have veteran experience. And you could say that's what the Steelers did with Aaron Rodgers. But it just feels like it feels like they missed out on a bunch of opportunities in this draft where they could have done something, given Will Howard some experience before he could have touched the field. And if Aaron Rodgers is a bluff, that's something that might happen pretty quickly if Aaron Rodgers starts to struggle early on with Will Howard coming in.
Do you really see Aaron Rodgers being a mentor figure towards Will Howard?
We have to give him the Jordan Love experiment. Even though you could say that was Matt LaFleur.
He didn't want Jordan Love. He couldn't stand Jordan Love on that team. You know, that was kind of the first part of the breaking point between him and Green Bay, was them taking Jordan Love instead of a wide receiver or offensive line help for Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know. I mean, yes, you could certainly point to Jordan Love's success as a quarterback, but wouldn't that kind of be the same thing as like Aaron Rodgers when he took over for Brett Favre? It's almost like they sat for 4 years, so at that point you've kind of seen an NFL defense and know how it works.
That's very true. And I can't say that Aaron Rodgers was a mentor to Zach Wilson. We saw how that effect went this year. We can't say that either. So you make a great point there.
Well, I think Zach Wilson he had some,
Other issues.
there's a little more to work on with Zach Wilson than Aaron Rodgers could probably help him with in terms of quarterback play. Should not have been the number 2 overall pick in any world, but that's what we live in. The Jets, like the Browns, like the Bears, can never draft a quarterback. So it's always a fun one.
Well, that's another conversation for another day. But when we're looking at Aaron Rodgers
yeah.
right now, how do you see that them bringing in DK Metcalf? Do you think that was a good idea? And what are your thoughts on the George Pickens trade as well? Do you think that was a good idea?
Kind of seems like a lateral move, honestly. When you think of DK Metcalf and George Pickens, they're very similar wide receivers. Both tall, physical, deep threats, but able to kind of go up and high point, can get a contested catch. So it kind of seems like you're replacing Pickens with DK Metcalf, and I don't know. I feel like they could have just given that money to George Pickens instead of giving up draft capital and then extending DK Metcalf. Why not just extend George Pickens? Kind of gets the same effect. That's at least my thinking. I just don't think they're that far off in terms of kind of where they are in their wide receiver hierarchy to kind of say, yeah, we're going to give up draft capital and really not get that much back when they gave up George Pickens.
Yeah, it felt like you hit the nail on the head. And I think this is a little bit more of an indictment on George Pickens, that the Steelers were willing to not only move off of him, but bring in pretty much his exact same carbon copy to the team before trading him. They were pretty much set in stone that they didn't want him. They just wanted a guy like him. They just didn't want him. So in a way, just a little bit, maybe it's a little bit of an indictment on George Pickens. We know how much of an on-the-field character he has. He's had some on-the-field issues with George Pickens. We don't need to discuss that. But when we're looking at this team, you get rid of Najee Harris. You have Jalen Warren there now. I mean, did I get that right, or did they get rid of Jalen Warren and keep Najee? Which one?
Jalen Warren's still there.
Okay.
Najee's gone to the Chargers.
I always mixed it up. But, yeah, so now we're looking at, you still have a good running game. You have a decent offensive line. Cameron Hayward, you bring up Cameron Hayward a bunch when we're talking about this. He's getting older. How much time does he still have left in the tank? He's had a couple major injuries as well. You have TJ Watt that still needs a contract. It just feels like this Rodgers move was a Band-Aid that you probably could have sent the money elsewhere as well, in a way. I'll leave the final thoughts with you, Jake, on this season. How well do you think this team can be come playoff time?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see if we get to see the Steelers in the playoffs this year. I don't know if this move honestly improves Pittsburgh. I think it's kind of more of maintaining the status quo at this point. I think we're kind of going to see an average offense out of the Steelers. Aaron Rodgers, it's going to be more of that up and down kind of, there's moments of, his former greatness, but then there's moments of him being a 42-year-old coming off a major injury a couple of years ago and just not having that much left in the tank. I think this is probably a 9-8, 10-7 season for Pittsburgh. I don't know if they're strong enough to kind of go past that. And honestly, I could see Aaron Rodgers almost hurting them more than helping them this season. I just don't know how much this move actually improves the Steelers. I kind of see it being more of the same over there in Pittsburgh. But we're certainly going to find out coming up in a couple months.
For sure. Pittsburgh definitely has a lot of work to do. Mike Tomlin has his work cut out for him this year. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, I'm going to leave it on that note. We're going to switch gears next to a sport we don't cover all that much, but we had a big event last night in the WWE. We're going to switch gears over to the Money in the Bank event that happened last night. Some big news that happened there, who won the matches, and preview a little bit of Monday Night Raw, how this is going to shape out for Monday Night Raw tomorrow night. You're watching the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Don't go anywhere. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Marav Temi, joined today by my good friend and co-host, Jake Daly. In our next segment here, before we jump into our next segment here, I wanted to give a little bit of an update on Game 2 going down right now between the Oklahoma City Thunder and Indiana Pacers. OKC up 57-39 with just under 2 minutes to play in the second quarter. And a big name that I said needed to step up in this one. Oh, okay, I thought I was frozen for a second. But the name that I said needed to step up in this one, Chet Holmgren has stepped up. He has 11 points in the first half right now. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leading the way with 13 points as always. And the Thunder look like they're cruising by 18 points just before halftime here. Tyrese Halliburton, not even apparent, looking right, only 3 points. So keeping him in check is going to be a big part of this one. But it looks like the Thunder are smooth sailing so far, and we'll get into that. We'll give a little bit of an update on that before we close out the show. But let's jump into our next segment here because we got to jump into some WWE news that happened last night. Money in the Bank last night, one of the premier events of the WWE year round, and I'm gonna give it to the aficionado over here with Jake Daly, one of the biggest WWE fans I know, and he knows all about it. Who won last night, and what are your thoughts on the immediate outcome of that, especially as we look forward to Monday Night Raw tomorrow?
So for those of you that don't know this about me, I am a huge wrestling fan. Obviously, got to normally talk about college football, but now I get to talk about everything, which means I get to talk about wrestling. Women's Money in the Bank match, pretty interesting match. Roxanne Perez really kind of showed out throughout this entire thing. One thing I was kind of intrigued by was almost the absence of Rhea Ripley. We saw her at times, but there were also 2 or 3 moments in this match where she was out for 5 to 8 minutes. Big spots where she wasn't, just kind of into the action. Stephanie Vicaire had a spot where she repeatedly smashed Rhea Ripley's face into the ladder with her knees. It was pretty cool. I really kind of enjoyed that. Then there was kind of one where Roxanne Perez, Alexa Bliss, they were both on ladders, kind of pulled off this Hurricane Rana move. It was a little too coordinated for me. So I liked this match, kind of up and down. Naomi, though, the big winner. Naomi, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but she's right now kind of in this big feud on SmackDown with Bianca Belair, with Jade Cargill. It's going to be really intriguing. And adding the Money in the Bank briefcase to that, Tiffany Stratton obviously is the champion on SmackDown right now. But if Naomi cashes in, kind of gets the championship, adds that to this feud with Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, it just makes it that much more important. I really like it. And Naomi is a wrestler that's won a couple women's championships, but really hasn't showcased her potential in WWE. Really had a super strong run in TNA under the name Trinity Fatu, but you kind of haven't really seen that in WWE. So Naomi winning is going to be really interesting. And then obviously the men's Money in the Bank matchup, Seth Rollins winning. The ending sequence, absolutely insane, of this match. Really kind of chaotic though. So obviously Seth Rollins with his new group, Paul Heyman, Bronson Reed, and Braun Breaker. They're I think they're calling them the Vision. The Vision. I don't know if I like that. But I don't know if I love that. But obviously those two big boys show up, start wrecking havoc, just smashing stuff, breaking things, all the types of fun stuff. And then you get the Samoan werewolf, Jacob Fatu, to come out with JC Mateo, kind of combat them, fight them off. And at one point, it looked like Solo Sikoa was going to take the Money in the Bank briefcase. There was a point where it's him and Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu had kind of gone on a rampage, as he does if you've ever seen him perform. That guy is a madman. Super fun to watch, but actually looks really insane when you're watching him perform on a WWE stage. So Jacob Fatu, Solo Sikoa are in the middle of the ring, and they set the ladder up Solo starts climbing the ladder. Jacob's like, "Go, you got this." Solo reaches for the briefcase and then feels the hand of Jacob Fatu on his calf, pulling him down and screaming, "I hate you," in a significant twist, going against the new bloodline leader in Solo Sikoa, kind of cementing his own legacy. And then, because of this, the sneaky Seth Rollins does it again, kind of slithers his way in there at the end and climbs the ladder, wins Money in the Bank after everybody else did the dirty work. But a great matchup and a lot of different storylines here. Then you have your main event, tag team matchup: Cody Rhodes, Jey Uso versus Logan Paul and John Cena, champion versus champion, challenger versus challenger. Really kind of interesting. I didn't love the action throughout. I thought it was kind of meh, kind of up and down. But you get to the end sequence, which was pretty sweet. There's kind of interference. Then it gets to the point where John Cena and Cody Rhodes are in the ring. Cena's got his title, goes to hit Cody Rhodes in the face. He does. He goes for the pin, and he gets attacked by a masked man. Who is that masked man? None other than R-Truth. Oh, absolutely. Absolute cinema. R-Truth. After the rumors that WWE had not renewed his contract, after the speculation, after the chance of We Want Truth on SmackDown this week, we get Truth in Money in the Bank last night. I don't know if you have any reactions to kind of everything I just blurted out over the past couple minutes, but it was a great event. I don't know what you got about that, Mira, but if there's anything,
There's a couple interesting things that I haven't watched WWE that intent. The last time I did was probably that Roman Reigns era started bringing me back in. When I first got into it, it was about 2017, 2018, when Roman, Samoa Joe, Brock Lesnar were all on their early runs. The Undertaker was still involved. That was when I was first getting into it. So a bunch of these names that you're bringing up, Naomi, you bring up even R-Truth, John Cena, of course. There's a bunch, Paul Heyman. There are a bunch of guys that are still around that I'm still shocked are still performing at such a high level. Alexa Bliss even. But when you're looking at this, it feels like the vision, you want to call it, the new bloodline that's being set up over there with Solo Sikoa heading it. I don't know how this is all going to show down because it feels like Cody Rhodes is going to stay the champion for a while. I don't think, or John Cena is still the champion. What am I saying?
We got Cena and Jey Uso. One thing that I think, too, is going to be interesting about Raw tomorrow: Jey Uso versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Could we see a Seth Rollins cash-in on 2 nights after? He's got that group. Think about it. If Jey Uso already kind of beat up from the tag team match in the main event, then he's got a World Heavyweight Championship match against a former champion in Gunther, a guy who is absolutely a freak. The Ring General is his nickname. This is a guy that loves wrestling, loves the sport of it, and is a dominant figure throughout wrestling. So you have AJ Uso that has to go face Gunther tomorrow night. Already beat up from Saturday. Even if he wins on Monday night, gonna be beat up too. So do you get a Seth Rollins capitalizing on that, using his muscle in Braun Breaker, in Bronson Reed, to kind of slither his way into that World Heavyweight Championship? I think that's something that's very possible, and it's kind of intriguing to think about.
For sure. Bronson Reed bringing in his inner Samoa Joe out on ringside. I could 100% see it. I could see Seth Rollins doing that. It just feels like
In your spare time, you got to look up Bronson Reed's Tsunamis and just watch it and be in awe of how a man that size can move like that. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly, when you think about some of this stuff.
He's
Yeah,
done moonsaws. He's jumped off the top rope. There's no reason a guy that big should be able to move like that. 100%. It's crazy stuff.
I think too with SmackDown then. Solo Sikoa versus Jacob Fatu. This is going to be a big storyline going forward. You have Solo Sikoa, kind of the guy who took over after Roman Reigns, um, tried to take that mantle for himself, and now it's kind of seems like he's being upstaged himself by Jacob Fatu, who came in a little later into WWE, but has kind of quickly become one of the staples of WWE, one of the most exciting superstars that SmackDown has to offer. United States champion at one point. This is a guy that's a freak and must watch TV every time he's on the screen. So I just wonder, are we kind of seeing him take the mantle instead of Solo Sikoa? Is Jacob Fatu going to be kind of that next Roman Reigns type character? Or is it going to be maybe Solo Sikoa still?
Yeah. Do you see Roman Reigns coming back anytime soon into the ring?
See, I don't know. I mean, he's kind of at the point though. It's almost like a Brock Lesnar where you don't need him to show up that much. Even when he was still champion, you looked at the last year or two he was wrestling. He really only wrestled 20 times in the entire year, pretty much, when some of these guys are wrestling 150, 200 times a year. So he was kind of already slowing down. I think we might see him kind of be that next version of either Brock Lesnar or kind of like a Cena Rock type character where he's already had some roles in Hollywood. Could he kind of start doing something similar where he's trying to take more acting roles on? Yeah, but it's going to be interesting when we see Roman Reigns next in a WWE ring, especially after kind of the fallout from WrestleMania and just everything there with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman obviously backing Seth Rollins now. That's really intriguing, has a ton of layers for whenever Roman Reigns returns. With the Paul Heyman history, and then you look at CM Punk too. If Seth Rollins does end up taking the championship from this Money in the Bank briefcase, you have a primetime matchup in CM Punk just waiting there. The Paul Heyman storylines, the fact that these two dudes just really can't even stand each other anyways, it writes itself. So I think there's a lot of different storylines that we kind of saw throughout Money in the Bank last night. Dominic Mysterio also retaining his Intercontinental Championship in a match against Octagon Jr. from AAA, the Mexican Lucha Libre promotion that WWE obviously just purchased. That was a quick match, solid match, kind of more of a showcase type match. But I think overall this was a great card. Really kind of helps advance a lot of storylines, gave some positive momentum for WWE going into the summer. I don't know if you kind of have any other thoughts on anything I said though.
The last question I kind of have is a guy that's kind of burst on the scene for the last 2 or 3 years now, slowly sliding his way up the ranks in a way in terms of being in more promotions, being in the ring more often. Do you see Logan Paul making any noise farther than where he already is? He's already been a little bit of a character. He was a little bit of a character when he first joined, but I mean, he's been there for so long in a way. He's kind of shed that old skin of his and kind of turned into a little bit of a WWE star over there.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly still the perception around Logan Paul, right, of the Hollywood, wannabe, but he's played into that, right? He's played into that. We kind of see those heel tendencies being played up now, especially in the past couple of months. This is a guy, though, that if he ever actually committed to WWE full-time, has World Heavyweight Championship potential. With how fast he was able to kind of take to the ring, just in terms of in-ring ability as well as talking on the microphone, giving promos, crowd interaction, the whole thing. This is a guy that a lot of people don't like him, but that's part of the shtick. That's part of the job. Um, he's paid for people to not like him, so he's pretty good at it at that in that regard. Um, but I think if he ever really truly did kind of fully dive into WWE, this is a guy that has all the athleticism in the world, has already kind of developed that in ring acumen when he's not even really fully training full time. If he ever dove full time in, this would be a guy that could potentially be a world heavyweight championship contender. I just don't know if he ever really truly buys in. But Logan Paul certainly has talent. It's more of, does he want to do WWE and wrestling full time?
For sure. The athleticism, the acting that he already possesses, the way he's able to work the mic, he's able to work the mic pretty well as well. He could be. I could 100% see it. But yeah, we'll leave it on that note. We got a big Raw tomorrow, and we'll probably touch on that as we move further throughout the week. But I'm gonna leave it on that note. Coming up next, we're gonna switch gears back over to actually hockey. We haven't talked a whole bunch of hockey. We didn't get to talk about the Stanley Cup Game 2 last night. We saw a big Game 2, a double overtime thriller, and I cannot wait to talk about that. You're watching the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Don't go anywhere.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Marav Temi. I keep saying GSMC Basketball Podcast. I used to run it. I don't run it anymore.
Habit, man. It's habit, you know.
It's habit. We're breaking out of it. We're getting used to this new style podcast that we've been running for the last few days or so. And this is pretty much what we got every weekend. You can bet on it every single weekend. You'll see me, and you'll see Jake right next to me. So we'll jump right back into the action here. We had game two between the Edmonton Oilers and the Florida Panthers last night. A phenomenal game, double overtime thriller. Brad Marchand scoring 2 goals in this one. What a game we saw. It literally was an exact same It was a copy of game 1 in a way, without the stupid penalty at the end of game 1 that Edmonton scored off of. We saw McDavid magic with his in and out moves. I would say dribbling, but skating through 2 defenders, getting it to Alan Draisaitl, and him punching it into the back of the net. McDavid having 2 assists in this one. Draisaitl having a goal and an assist. Edmonton showed up big time in this one. But when we look at this game, Edmonton had a bunch of chances, but it was not only the issue of Stuart Skinner that I've continued to say I still think is going to be an issue in this series as it continues to move further, but it was the veteran experience and goal scoring of not only Brad Marchand, but the Florida Panthers as a whole. The defense of the Florida Panthers is so unbelievably good. Not only can they play on their heels, they can get back in transition, but their ability to score. They are the number 1 scoring threat They have the number one goal scoring out of their defensemen. 3, in fact, scoring last night outside of Brad Marchand. But the Panthers taking game 2, 5-4, to bringing this series back to Florida, tied at 1 game apiece. What a phenomenal series we have on our hands, Jake. And give me your initial thoughts so far on how this series has gone.
Yeah, well, one of those veterans too for Florida, when you talk about that roster, is Sam Bennett. And this is a guy that has earned a big time payday over this summer as one of the top unrestricted free agents, but super effective around the net, has a league best 10 goals in the playoffs, has added to that already. A guy where he can score anytime, also has a habit of just being very highly effective around the net, kind of getting into goalies' ways. You had the game 1. Did he bump Stuart Skinner on purpose? It's up for debate. But that's the kind of crafty veteran move that's just this Florida Panthers team, it's reminiscent of. This is just what they do. They're able to kind of work, be crafty, be savvy, but bring this hard-nosed, physical style of hockey. And this is just a lot of fun, frankly, to watch this matchup. Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid working their magic right now. And then another thing I got a thought about, will Bill Zito finally win a General Manager of the Year? Can you give this man his flowers? Finally, 4th year in a row, he's a finalist for GM of the Year. And you look at his deadline, bring in Seth Jones. Who's Seth Jones? Had a goal last night, has played over 30 minutes in each of game 1 and game 2. And then you bring in the other big guy in Brad Marchand. Game winner in game 2. Absolutely crucial veteran presence. So give this guy GM of the Year, man. I won the Stanley Cup last year. He's in it again this year. I'm just curious, too, on goalie play. I think the goalies have honestly kind of played better than their numbers suggest right now. They've both faced so many high caliber shots in these first 2 games. I mean, you look at just, they keep coming. Even before Brad Marchand's goal last night, there was multiple shots where they were really good chances for Florida, and Stuart Skinner was able to kind of save it. So yes, I do think goalkeeping is going to continue to be kind of a topic that we're going to talk about in regards to this finals. But I don't know, who do you kind of think is some of the X factors for this next game 3?
When we're looking at game 3, I think we both touched on it. We bring in Stuart Skinner. I think it's the goal scoring. I think it's literally the goal. It's the goalkeeping. It's not the goal scoring. Well, I guess it's the goalkeeping. It's Sergei Bobrovsky. It's Stuart Skinner. How they're able to have their presence known in the net. And they've done a phenomenal job so far. But when we're looking at these two teams right now, at how phenomenal they're both playing at such an unbelievable level. Stuart Skinner made some big saves last night. That last goal was unfortunate. Brad Marchand with just a one-on-one scoring net. I've seen it time and time again back in the day when I used to watch Brad Marchand play in the black and gold in Boston. But we don't see it anymore. And as much as it hurts to see him not wearing that black and gold in Boston, when I saw him going down the lane, it was just like, I've seen this movie before. I know what's about to happen. And Brad Marchand just faking out Skinner, putting it through the 5-hole, and that was the game. 2 goals for Brad Marchand in a big way. But I think the defensive line, not only for Edmonton, funny enough, it's Florida with 17 goals as defensemen. 17 defensemen have scored for Florida. It's the number 1 rank throughout the NHL playoffs so far. Who's number 2? Edmonton with 13. Both these teams are playing phenomenally on both ends. But it's going to come down to the star players. It's going to come down to Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. We haven't seen McDavid get into the scoring category yet, but he's had a lot of playmaking, and he's been a phenomenal playmaker down. His puck handling has been otherworldly throughout the series. If you guys have not seen that clip of him skating through 2 defenders to get it to Draisaitl, that second goal again last night in game 2, just go watch it. You can watch it fast regular speed. But just watch the slow-mo version of it, and then just think of how crazy it is, how quickly he's able to make those plays in full speed. It is so unbelievable how quick he can move with the puck, and he truly is one of the best modern puck handlers that we've seen in the NHL. But in this series, in Game 3, I think it really comes down to the goal scoring and how I think McDavid's going to need to show up in a big way in these. I think it comes down to the star players. What are your thoughts on it, Jake?
One name I think honestly is Evander Kane. When you look at the Oilers already missing Zach Hyman for the rest of the playoffs, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is reportedly a game time decision for Game 3. You kind of need one of these other forwards. You know the focus is going to be on Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Panthers are going to key on those two guys, two of the best offensive players in the world. I think Connor McDavid's probably the best player in the world, regardless of offense or defense. But you're going to key in on those two guys. You're going to need a supporting piece. A guy like Evander Kane, who scored in Game 2, but a guy who can potentially take up that role of scoring, being that wing option for them. When you're already missing Zach Hyman, you're potentially missing another one of your top 6 forwards in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I think this is kind of a guy, him as well as Jeff Skinner, one of those two forwards needs to kind of step up to help supplement that Edmonton offensive attack.
For sure. And Nugent-Hopkins is such a big part of that game. We saw a big part of this offense. We saw him go down in Game 2 with a wrist injury. It's going to be interesting to see how he can get back from this one. He went straight into the locker room, but we know how tough these players can be.
Reportedly did not practice today as well.
Really?
So that's, kind of why I think that's a situation that we're going to have to try to monitor.
For sure. We have to monitor that. This Florida Panthers defense is so unbelievably good. You have to have all hands on deck against them. If you're just missing one guy, even a guy like Nugent-Hopkins, he is such a crucial piece of that offense at how playing off of Leon Draisaitl, taking some of the pressure off of Connor McDavid with the puck sometimes. You need him out there. He's just one of those preliminary threats that you need to have out there. On the other side, Connor Verhaeghe, you have Matthew Tkachuk, who has a little bit of a quieter series so far, but he's a little bit of a defenseman. The reason you have Matthew Tkachuk out there is to just lay guys out, and he has done a phenomenal job at that all series long. He needs to keep it up if the Panthers are going to continue on this streak. But keeping on that topic, who do you have in this Game 3? As we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but who do you have for Game 3, Jake?
I think we got to go with Florida right now. Having the momentum after Game 2, you're going to go back home. And this is a veteran-laden team that already has the Stanley Cup winning experience from last season. I just think they're going to be able to settle in at home, kind of tune in on some of those struggles from the first 2 games, and be able to settle in and take this Game 3, take a 2-1 lead going into Game 4. What about you?
I think so too. I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate though. I think the Oilers really need this game. I see Connor McDavid coming out and having a massive Game 3. I see him breaking through the floodgates, getting past Bobrovsky. I see Bobrovsky having a little bit of a quieter game. He's been pretty locked down so far in this series, but we usually give him a game to mess up. I'm going to call his bluff. I'm going to call it this time. Game 3. Massive game. The Oilers are going to need it in Florida. Put Florida back on their heels going into Game 4. I'm going with the Oilers and Connor McDavid in this one.
I was going to say, you can't be talking all about Connor McDavid and not go with the Oilers there. You have to stand on you got to stand on what you're talking about there.
I'm not running the WWE PR mic where I just throw in, but I'm not doing that. But we'll leave